welcome to Assets Under Management Season 1. I'm your host, Misha Kaufman, as well as
Gabriel Craft.
We're excited to talk to you about financial freedom, talk you through different levels of stages of people that have gone and reached that level in this season, and just also allow you to learn more about us, how we approach things, and give you different nuances and ideas as you approach your financial journey. Before we get started into this season's episode, because it's number 1, we wanted to just do a quick introduction about who we are, how we got to this place, and how we can hopefully give you information that will be helpful. Gabe, did you want to start with the introduction?
Sure thing. Let me jump in and let folks know how I got to be on this wonderful stage with Misha. I'm probably best described as a real estate nerd now at this point in my life, but the early parts of my career started in nonprofit and education. Similar to Misha, I did spend a lot of time in public schools and in classrooms, and transitioned into business school in 2013 and had a couple years to think about what I wanted to do. Bumped into, or actually got to interview, the late, great Sam Zell. And between him and some of my university professors, I saw the beauty of commercial real estate. So coming out of business school, got a good job, but I knew that I wanted to kind of turn any money that I could save from my good job into real estate. And that's what I did between 2016 and now. I've gotten to a little over 2,000 units as a passive investor. And me and Misha just closed 195 units here in Dallas, Texas. So I have a Texas portfolio of about 830 units that I am a general partner or lead sponsor on. Without getting too deep into the weeds on that, it just means that I'm in charge of a lot of places where people live, and have used that as my means for financial freedom. But I'll pass it back to you, Misha, to give you a little bit of your story and how you've kind of gotten to where you would be approaching financial freedom.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Gabe. And I think one thing that I think you and I both connected on very early is that we both have that education background in spirit in everything that we do. So for you, the listener, you can approach financial freedom and you can approach achieving financial goals with a servant mentality and a servant perspective. And that's definitely something that we share in common. So it's kind of a similar story. So I've been a financial freedom nerd for a very long time. And what I mean by that is if you look in the background in Gabe's portfolio or in Gabe's background, those are all books, and almost all of them have to deal with money and real estate and financial freedom. It's just something I've been obsessed with from a very young age. I've been obsessed with that as well as education. So after undergrad at Columbia University, I did do Teach for America, where I taught for 3 years. During that time, I was able to invest in 3 properties while being a teacher with a teacher's salary, to starting to build that passive income stream. And while I was teaching, I was always at the same time reading about money, developing new strategies, coming up with new ways to approach those goals, which led me down the path to real estate, where I currently oversee 7 multifamily properties as well as flips. It's something that I love to do, and it's something that's really exciting to see the progression in terms of wealth building and what that can provide. So we're excited to connect with you today and to talk about this topic. So this first episode, Gabe, is really about the basics of financial freedom. For you, how do you define that? And what nuances do you see in terms of your perspective on how to reach that goal?
Well, let me just start off by saying that early on, I was making not a lot of money as a public school teacher. And unlike you, I hadn't found any way to kind of make more than I spend. So it almost felt like guilty to think about like the luxuries of financial freedom at that stage. So when I met you and we talked about your background, it's very inspirational that you were able to start off on that. And I think it's eye-opening now. When you ask what's changed or what's different about financial freedom for me now, I look back on it and I realize I probably could have gotten started on this journey from anywhere, because all of it is above the shoulders, right? It's all stuff that's happening in your head as you're moving forward, and you're making money or making enough money. You never think you're making enough. Financial freedom has really almost been a decision at some point. I think coming out of business school, I was really focused on it, because the definition for me is the technical definition is when you have enough, you're making enough money from your assets to cover your basic living.
Yeah.
But, so much of that is dependent on how much you spend and what you think of as the very basic necessities in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's got this crazy range of what they feel they have to live on, and then when they go through experiences, they change that. Sometimes they bump it up, right?
Yeah.
And I did that a lot. I did that in a lot of steps. Sometimes they bump it backwards, right? And sometimes they start to realize, like, I don't need all those things that I thought I needed, whether it's a house or a car or a really nice house or a really nice car. And so, we're starting to get to that stage now in my life where I define financial freedom as taking over control of all those things financially that put that stress in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you really start to march down all the traditional steps of financial freedom until you hit that, that seductive long-term goal of financial independence, and
Yeah.
where you really aren't thinking about how much you're spending, because you don't have to, because you're making an abundance of money from your assets.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I see it the same way. So I think when I think about financial freedom, I take a step back and think about what are my values, right? So the biggest value for me is my time, right? Time is something that you never can get back. But how many of us are doing work that we may like or not like, but we need to spend those hours doing it in order to spend the time the minuscule time we have on the weekends or after work to be able to hang out with our family or do what we want to do. Being able, regardless of your political stances, philosophy, XYZ, if you're able to generate income from your assets, that's going to give you more and more potential to spend the time the way that you want to. And that's for us what financial freedom means. It is a number, right? So it does mean that you have enough income to cover your expenses. But there's a lot of levers you can pull in order to do that. One, which is the easiest one that we can control right now, is to lower our expenses, right? Being happy with a more comfortable lifestyle, not going out to eat all the time, being able to really enjoy ourselves in our skin on a budget is the first lever that we can pull. The second one, which is always a little bit harder, is for figuring out how to increase our income in our W-2 job or in our normal work. The third one is to be able to have a side hustle or be able to bring in income through some other means. And then the fourth one is to start to build income through your assets. So whether that can be real estate, which is where Gabe and I primarily have our portfolio focused in, but you can also get those returns from dividends, those returns from if you have a small business and you're getting some type of return from that. It's any type of asset where you're getting income from. You just want to create a stable stream to do that, regardless of where you are. It's something that we should all try to do.
When I think about financial freedom, I think it's cotton on. It's got a lot of buzz and there's a lot of interest there, but it is also important to remember that you're not forced to do this, right? This has to be a decision. It's almost like our relationship with money is a lot like our relationship with things that we go overboard on, whether it's diet or drugs or whatever it is, right? We have to consciously decide to start living a lot differently because finances are a part of our everyday life. It's one of those unique areas where you got to take control of it if that's what you want to do. You don't have to do it. You can live like everybody else, but know that there's something going on. At least as far as I've seen in 41 years on Earth, it's been an interesting road socially in the United States, because now I've spent some time overseas and spent some time living in other countries at brief periods of time. In the United States, you're going to get caught up in the hype. So if you don't actively pay attention to your finances, to your financial well-being, you will do what everybody else is doing naturally. You'll kind of lean towards that. And a lot of it will be you will make more, you will have less free time because you're making more, and that becomes very marginal, especially as you climb the corporate ladder. And then the other squeeze that I hate is you'll be spending money on things that you think will bring you happiness, and they'll have very short shelf lives. And at least for me, and I think one of the important things to highlight that Misha mentioned a moment ago is his values. He led with that because we all have different values. It's almost something that we adapt to, and then it becomes innate as we get older, and it kind of sticks with you for the rest of your life. Very little changes you can do to the values you have, your number one, number two, number three, and number four values in life. But money's great. Money's amazing. Financial independence is amazing because you can redirect your resources, your time and your money towards getting those things that you actually value. And if you don't, and if you're just in cruise control, you're probably going to buy a bunch of stuff you don't need, spend a bunch of money on things you think will make you happy, that make you happy for a very short amount of time, and be doing all of this alongside sacrificing your very valuable resource of time and adding a bunch of stress to your life as you climb the corporate ladder or you climb the whatever kind of ladder and you make more money. So I like it because I felt like a lot of freedom just in stepping into the realm of making key decisions about how I spend my money and how I make more money, and then how I invest that money that I make that I'm not spending in stuff that makes even more money. So putting my money to work while I'm sleeping. But this is all like the rosy end game of the story. I also spent decades just doing what everybody else was doing. So I think the first benchmark was me getting a car, and I was so stoked, and it felt great. And then quickly, it just had a car. And then I went from a crappy one bedroom to a crappy one bedroom in a better city to a better place to live in an even better city. It just increased my expenses a lot. So, I'm going to come back to the point here, land the plane, and say, I think a lot of this starts if you are interested down the path, getting clear on what you value and using that as your North Star. And that's kind of where I am now. I know what my three top are. It's family is number one for me. The accomplishment and contribution have kind of switched places, but contribution is number two for me. And third on the list is a combination of health and joy. I like to have fun, and I like to be healthy and continue to stay healthy to the extent that I can. But those are the things I want the money to work towards. So I do a lot of travel, a lot of time flying across the country to see the different various pockets of my family. And, that's really only been possible by staying steadfast on just trimming expenses, saving money, getting a good savings rate, and moving down this path where I've learned a little bit about some assets that I love and putting a lot of money into those.
Yeah, I love that, Gabe. And like I said, this first episode is really to give you that mindset, ideas, and concepts, right? We want you to have a vision of what that looks like. But like Gabe says, it's not rosy. There's no perfect world that we live in. This is the real world, and it is difficult. It is challenging, but it's also, the reality of being able to get checks coming back to you every month makes a difference. Like so this morning, I'm going to get $600 worth of distributions this month, right? $600 makes a difference, right? It allows you the flexibility to take your wife on a date, allows you to get that toy that otherwise you can't get. It just gives you a little bit of cushion to be able to live your life with a little bit more peace. So that's what we're talking about. There are people that make $6,000, $10,000, all those things, but even just that little bit to start of seeing money coming back to you, it really changes things. And I think that's what I wanted to give you guys an idea of, especially on this episode, of like, what would your life look like if you didn't have to worry about the next paycheck? I'll just leave it there. What would you have to? What would your life look like if you didn't have to worry about the next paycheck? Do you have a little bit more breathing room to think about your future, to think about what you really want to do, to spend a little bit more time with your family and be present and not have everything in the back of your mind like, oh my gosh, I got to do this. Oh my gosh, I got to do that. That's what we're talking about, is just creating that little bit of breathing room. And like Gabe said, money's there regardless of whether or not we want to think about it or talk about it. It's like for me, right? I'm trying to diet. Whether or not, there are times where I pretend that it doesn't matter, that I can just eat whatever I want and I'm going to be fine. But the reality is that regardless of whether or not I believe in it, it's going to affect my life and my health and all those things. So we have to be conscious of it and make decisions to move in the right direction if we want to live a life that's less stressful, if we want to live a life that's more meaningful on our terms. It makes sense to start to envision that process. And what I would recommend you do, at least for a starting point, is really write down what you want your life to look like. It's not always the things, right? So Gabe was talking about how he got the car. I was like, oh man, like this isn't what I thought it would be. But it probably starts with what you want to feel. How do I want to feel when I wake up every morning? What experiences do I want to have? Who do I want to hang out with and spend time with? How do I want to be spending my time? Those things is a vision that you have control over, that can bring meaning to your life. And then as we move future in this podcast, you can start to think through the strategies that are going to allow you to reach that goal. And it's more, I want you to focus more on the feeling, more on the experiences that you can control, not, oh, I want to have $1 million, $2 million, because that benchmark, and trust me, we live it. Once you make 1 million, you want two. Once you want two, you want 10. So regardless of where you're at in this journey, that process is never ending, but finding the meaning in the actual your experience of life, that's something that you can control, and the strategies that we provide will just help you to reach those type of goals.
Yeah, because grind, man, working sucks. Okay, working sucks because the crazy part is like we're doing 99% of us are doing something, or at least some aspects of something that we don't necessarily want to do, and that's the beauty of it. That's work, right? That's we're providing value to other people in our work. But man, a lot of times you don't even know what you want to be focused on in the realm of like a W-2 job or entrepreneurship or any of that stuff, because you're so bogged down just trying to put a roof over your head, and then all of a sudden trying to get the shoes and the car and the house or whatever, right? So I think to Misha's point, like stop and try to figure out those values, those things that you value. And it's pretty easy to do. I mean, there's a lot, you could Google it, right? The value exercises for me were really critical. Once I figured that out, it became a lot easier to be like, all right, now I kind of know I have the North Star. I'm excited. I'm energized to try to actually focus on the money stuff. Because once I had to sit down and cut stuff from my budget, I had to make it. Yeah, budget's a strong word because I don't think that's always the best technique. But I had to start thinking about how much I was spending on stuff and like maybe putting it down and writing it down and adding stuff up and going, ooh. And, you know, when I had a reason to do that, it became a lot easier to start. Maybe kind of like if you're trying to diet, like to use that analogy again, just having that reason to start, maybe something health scare. All of a sudden you're like, boom, now I'm going to get in shape. And you got to have some motivating factor. What I found is I started to unpeel all of the financial burdens that I had put myself in, even things like not having caught up on taxes, not having done, X, Y, or Z in terms of having a savings rate. I didn't know what a savings rate was. But once I got to a place where I was in a better position, I had found myself sitting in this like beautiful San Francisco skyline. I had done the business school. I worked my butt off on this job to get this great position at a technology company, and I found out it was a great position for somebody else, but it wasn't a great fit for me. I was sitting in there in like the cushiest office, eating cereal, miserable at this job because of all the politics and office drama. And I was like, you know what? Actually, I think I'm more an entrepreneur that just didn't have enough money or have enough balance sheet to try to chase my dreams. And again, that was just for me. It might be totally different for somebody else. I mean, my wife's the opposite. I was putting her, she was in positions where she could be chasing her dreams, and she realized she's very good and very excited about specific parts of her career that she's able to focus on. So I say a lot to say that like you're going to need to sit down and figure out what you value. And one of the best things you can do for yourself to then be able to pursue that value is to unburden yourself financially, because I think at least in the United States, or at least the part of the United States I grew up in, I felt myself always chasing some American dream that was not Gabe's dream, and doing stuff that I was just counterintuitive or counterproductive to where I was trying to get to my goals, to my real goals of living a fulfilling life. So for me personally, what had worked is like, once I started to unwind financially and get in a better position, I'd find some new thing that I didn't even know about myself. And then it'd be like, oh, like I didn't know I wanted to be an entrepreneur until I got into a better position where I could even flirt with that concept. And then I was like, yeah, this is actually me. And that's where I spent my energy. And that's what gets me going in the morning. That's what I'm excited about. And it's work, but it's a different kind of work for me. And it doesn't mean everybody listening is an entrepreneur, but I couldn't even picture that when my mortgage had gotten to X, so my income needed to get to Y. And then my kids started coming, so my expenses went to Z, and I needed to get to the next, platform to be able to pay for all that stuff.
Yeah.
We were joking around about this before we decided to jump on this topic, but I'll just say it here. If you're hearing this young and you ain't got all solidified yet, and there's no significant other that you have to make financial decisions with, and things are pretty good and even, and you could flex down and go live with the parents and have a great savings rate, look, it's so valuable to make smart financial decisions on your foundation early, because you've got the compounding of time. Time and money are really important. Resources in general just look a lot better over a stretch of time if you can play them out in your benefit. So take that part of it seriously if you're young. And if you're not, if you're older, if you're 99 listening to this, never too young to start.
Yeah.
Right? The savings ratio is something you can work on, and it could be changed tomorrow. But it's a scary journey to open up those books and take a look at how you've been spending money. And so, it's a lot rosier if you start when you're making $1,000 a week or a month even, right? And then everything's going to get better from there. But if you've already made some tough decisions, it's time to knuckle up and sit down and write out how you're spending your money and get the savings rate tight.
Yeah. And I think that's the one thing that I was lucky enough to start pretty early. And I didn't make a lot starting off. So after college, my first job, I don't know if I told you this, game, but I was working in New York making $16K a year. So I was thinking about food stamps because that's kind of where I was at. But even on that very tight budget, living on couches, XYZ, I was able to save $5,000 that I was able to put into a deal, right? That $5,000 when I wanted a teacher's salary, which was a huge upgrade for me, up to $40,000, I was able to save $20,000 and put it into a deal, right? And those things compound pretty early on. Where now I'm able to put in $100,000 to $200,000 a year. And it's not that I was very smart. It's just if you're able to live on less, if you don't need a lot of these external markers of success, you can get by with very little. And the longer that you can do that, the earlier that you can do that, you have a lot more freedom and runway moving forward. We'll have to show you some statistics soon, but essentially, if you're able to start saving, even if it's 1,000, 2,000 when you're 16, 17, that's better than someone that's able to save tens of thousands when they're in their 30s, because the power of compounding is that strong that your money has time to work for you. And the longer that your money has time to work for you, the better that it's going to do. It's really that simple. I think I do the last topic, and I want to kind of not cut it short for today, but not extend it too long for you guys, is the importance of this, not for us, right? So I think at this point in our lives for Gabe and myself, we don't do this work simply for us. We do it for our kids. We do it for our family. We do it for people we care about or other people that we want to kind of bring along this path. What's been really special for me about, and I'm not financially free by any means, but being on that road, is that my wife has the ability to do the work that she likes to do, right? Versus the work that she has to do or XYZ. So she's able to serve in a capacity where she was able to start her own program to help kids with autism learn gymnastics. And she's able to do that every Saturday. She has a team of employees that she works with. She's got about 20 kids that she serves. And just hearing her light up talking about those things, that inspires me to continue my work and what I do. Because when we are able to bring in that extra income, she's able to work, but she's able to work on something that she's passionate about that adds value to others. And that's just something that's really exciting and important to me.
That's cool. That's a good motivator, right? I mean, you got to find your why. You got to find your motivation to make a change. Otherwise, you'll stay in stasis. But since you brought it up, since you opened up the can of worms, we started talking about return over time and compounding. I'm going to say that one thing I want us to give people or get just talking about it through season 1 is the different ways you can then, so I talked about savings, right? The more you can save, the more you can invest. But the concept here, especially for the people that are, sort of beyond the basics, is like, how should I approach that? I want to do real estate, but I don't want to have a second job. I want to do this, all these things that these wealthy people are doing. Or maybe there's too many things out there and I want to do all these different things and I don't take action on any of them. Well, what I'll say about it is that some of the traditional ways we've been taught, similar to like some of the traditional things we've been taught to spend money on, some of the ways we've been taught to invest, the compounding effect minimizes your ability to get and reach financial freedom quickly. And so I think some of the things me and Misha have keyed in on pretty early one, we love real estate. So it's always everything's going to look like real estate's the answer because we love it. So I'll try to keep as much bias out of this as possible. But let's just talk about like compounding. A lot of what we've been taught around the stock market in general, which I'll pick on for a moment, even though I love that as a method once you've built up your nest egg.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about it while you're growing, but for building up your nest egg, you're good to go, then I think there's an important component of the most successful businesses in the world that now sell stocks. But okay, let's take the percentage people throw out there. A lot of times it's like a 10% return. That's not what you're getting when you invest in stocks. It's just not how it works. There's a couple factors that push against that. You can't compound at 10% because the stock market's very volatile. So you'll have a year where it goes up 12% and a year where it goes down 3%, right? And over time, you're looking at that cumulative average. But if you put $1,000 in, it doesn't grow at that average number because of the down years kind of pulls back the benefits of the 12% year. So whatever you feel like is the average that the stock market's going to be in the future, which is hard to predict, the compounding doesn't work real well. Then you got to carve out of that compounding taxes because you will get taxed on your capital gains for investments in stock market. And one of the things I love about real estate, and one of the reasons you hear a lot of people talk about it, is because there are substantial tax benefits. Not the topic for season one, but definitely something that as you get more interested in this particular area, something that you need to learn about for your individual situation. And then on top of it, inflation will eat away at that 10%. So when you carve it all out, you take, let's say you were thinking you're hot shot, you had $100,000 saved up, and then you started putting, $25,000 a year extra into this savings, right? You're not going to be compounding as much as you think. And a lot of these calculators people are using, they don't have the right fundamentals behind them that include tax rates, inflation, and the concepts behind particularly the stock market where you might catch an average return over 10 years that's a certain number like 10%, but it's not going to include some of the volatility factor that slow you down. So I love assets that have the long-term strong benefits without the taxes and that are inflation sort of resistant. But those are sort of stickier products. You got to put your money in for a very long time oftentimes. And there's a lot of risk involved in any kind of investment. So you got to know the asset really well. And I'm also not as much a fan anymore as I've gotten really busy and built our own business of doing things that are like a second job. So I got off topic, but my point, we were talking about financial freedom.
We can't
one of the
ourselves.
ways you can get there is by investing in things that have a strong compounding effect with low taxes that can help you out in times of low inflation or high inflation. And in particular, especially with what we're experiencing right now, thinking about some of those factors so that you don't just get caught up doing what everybody else is doing. Because if you're doing what everybody else is doing, that can be really smart in many instances. But in other instances, it could mean that you're just not spending enough time on the things that are actually way more effective.
Yeah. I mean, and on that topic too, like realizing that net worth is not as important as you would think, right? So when you play the stock market game, which I love, don't get me wrong, I love the stock market, but there are some drawbacks, right? So you gotta, when I had my plan in my early 18, I'm gonna invest X, Y, Z, then you know what, how long it would take me to retire? It'd have to be 55 to 65, right? Because that's when I'm going to build up enough nest egg, and it would be a big number, whatever that number is, but I'd have to wait that long in order to take advantage of it. And then once I have all that money, then I either have to make sure that I'm getting a certain amount of dividend return to pay off my expenses, or I got to pay that down over time. And then what's going to happen is that my nest egg needs to decrease as I get older, and then I just got to hope. I got to hope that I survive as it goes down. That's the normal strategy that people have. But the reality is, even if I had this much less, but a huge portion of that is coming to pay off my expenses every month, I can have $400,000 as long as the income that's coming from those $400,000 is covering my expenses. I'm good. I don't need $6 million. I can survive with $400,000, and that money's working for me. And that's the game that we are playing. That's the cash flow game, right? So you're reaching financial freedom. The net worth is a number. It's a big stick that you can talk about with your friends, but it's nothing you can do anything with. How about money in your pocket that allows you to live your life on your terms while you're still young? And that's kind of the mindset shift that we have to have if we want to really enjoy and get the most out of our lives.
That's why there's, back to financial freedom, so many multimillionaires that are not financially free, and so many people that live on modest incomes, 5-digit numbers, that are financially free. And so, I'm really excited. I think, again, it goes back to, it's all an above the neck game. So please tune into the rest of the season as me and Misha come together to talk about, financial freedom, some of the experiences that we've had, some of the experiences that our friends and our guests have had, as well as some of the pathways. And really appreciate you, Misha, kind of steering us for season 1, because this is gonna be fun. I want to talk more about this.
This is gonna be fun. We're gonna nerd out and we're gonna enjoy it. If you have any questions, topics that you want us to cover, or just questions you have, we'll provide our information in the show notes. We are here, like I said, we are teachers, and that never leaves, and that's why we're doing this. We want to help you. Give us feedback on certain topics that you want to learn more about. Feel free to reach out to us, and we want to help guide you along this path. So with that, we're going to sign off for today. We look forward to connecting with you all soon, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Looking forward to it.
All right.